My four best non-family friends are Grant, Aaron, Jill, and Amber. Grant is a domestic law attorney. He is my doubles partner in tennis and 5 years older than I am. We have had many discussions about divorce, reconciliations, and married people's expectations and viewpoints. We've discussed these over lunches and drinks at the tennis club, as spectators at sporting events, and during card games with other men. Aaron is a psychologist. We've run a number of charity events together, and together we coach our son's basketball team and our daughter's soccer team. Aaron is the same age as Grant, 5 years older than I am, despite the fact that his son and daughter are the same age as mine, and good friends with my kids. We, too, have talked about divorce, reconciliations, male-female expectations, and the psychology of marriage sometimes with Grant, if Aaron joins our card-playing group, many times just the two of us. Jill is a marriage counselor and my partner in mixed pickleball. Jill is 3 years older than I am and is also good friends with my wife, Marie. In addition to meeting on the pickleball court and during lunches, Jill enjoys hiking almost always with Marie and Jill's husband, but on some occasions by ourselves. We also have had many discussions about divorce and reconciliation. Amber is 3 years younger than I am. I met Amber when I saved her from a bad situation. She maintains that I saved her life, but I think that is an over-dramatization. Anyway, we became friends, and she also became friends with Marie. Amber is a public and media relations expert and probably has more friends and acquaintances than anyone else that I know. The medical organization that I work for has, upon my recommendation, used her for public and media relations a couple of times with great success. I probably talk on the phone or text her at least every other day, and she often comes over to our house on weekends and we socialize with her and, if she has one, her date. There is one other thing about Amber which I am the only one of her real friends who knows. She is a part-time high-end escort. How I found that out is another story that I won't get into now. But our relationship is such that she knows that I don't judge her, so sometimes she even talks to me about it. She is single, but because of how many people she knows and her part-time job, which she enjoys, we often talk about married people's relationships and expectations. If I were ever to cheat on Marie, I have no desire to do that and can't even imagine doing that. I would love it to be with Amber, because she is the best-looking woman I know and she has a sparkling personality. Even if I were inclined to cheat, however, which I most definitely am not, it would never happen with her because she would believe that it might ruin or strain our friendship, and that is the last thing that she wants. Going back to her belief that I once saved her life and have often given her good advice about things she asked my input on. All four of my knowledgeable friends tell me that while there are exceptions, the two most common situations they know about when one spouse has cheated is seeing things with blinders on so that no compromise is possible and divorce ensures, or the wronged spouse so lacks self-confidence that reconciliation is sought regardless of the circumstances. In either case, the basic situation is black and white. In other words, there is no gray area. Of course, there are exceptions, but according to my friends, both spouses take a gray approach in only about 10 to 20% of the cases. I often wondered what my take would be if I was a cheated-on spouse. All of Grant, Aaron, and Jill have told me that. I've never actually discussed it with Amber, but from other things she's said, I'm sure that her take would be the same. You can't know until you experience it. I would like to think that I would be one of the gray thinkers, but wouldn't know until it actually happened. All four of my friends advise me that hard, uncompromising divorce usually doesn't work out for the non-cheater. The non-cheater finds a better spouse only about 25% of the time and either settles or finds no one suitable at all 75% of the time. The cheater doesn't normally have a future life of regret and deprivation like the non-cheater would like to believe will happen, but also doesn't do great 75% of the time. The other 25%, they almost completely bounce back. In cave-in reconciliation cases, the non-cheater usually feels inadequate and embarrassed by their appeasement if they stick it out and often ends up divorcing within 5 years anyway. Again, things aren't great for either the cheater or non-cheater. Most don't ultimately live a good life afterward, but don't end up penniless and hopeless either. The bottom line, usually black or white isn't the answer. A gray outlook has the best probability for success. My name is Sam Buttry. At the start of the substance of this tale, I was 35 years old and worked for a large medical organization as a supervisory medical laboratory professional. I have a BSc degree in medical laboratory science from the University of Cincinnati, a master's degree in medical laboratory administration from Virginia Commonwealth University, and an ASCP certification. Marie Buttry, also 35, and I had been married 11 years, with 2 kids, Jimmy and Julie. Marie worked in pharmaceutical sales. That alone will tell you that she's good-looking and smart, although it's not fair. Pharmaceutical companies only hire good-looking sales reps. Aside from being smart and good-looking, Marie is in good physical condition. She and I work out either together or separately, at least 4 times a week, and we both have above-average musculature and stamina. I enjoyed being married to Marie. We seemed to be compatible in almost every way. I would rate our intimate life as better than a 9 out of 10, and our companionship as close to a 10. Marie is a good mother who gives our kids genuine love and attention without overdoing it. While we have some divisions of labor that are along the lines of sexual expectations, we try as best as possible to divide up all chores equally and both participate in both kids' activities. I attend all of Julie's ballet recitals and take her to practice more often than Marie does, and Marie takes Jimmy to all of his basketball practices, and I meet him there to coach his recreational basketball team with Aaron, and we have similar approaches to Julie's soccer and Jimmy's band and other activities. In general, I have a very good life. It's a life I wanted to keep. At the start of my tale, my life was about 99% of what I considered ideal. Until the seminal part of this story, I never considered what percentage of ideal I'd take before making difficult wholesale changes. I realized that I didn't have a 99% optimum life one day in May, shortly after Marie's 35th birthday. It was a Saturday, and Marie had gotten back from the health club late. I was due to coach Julie's soccer team in a game in about 30 minutes, and Jimmy needed to get to band practice. She came in somewhat frazzled from her car with her pharmaceutical sample case and gym bag, hustled Jimmy to the car and gave me a quick kiss and Julie a hug, and good luck. After the whirlwind left the house while Julie was getting her jersey and shorts on, I went to move Marie's pharmaceutical case from where she had virtually thrown it on a living room couch and put it in her home office. She might not have securely latched it. The latch may have been disturbed when she tossed it on the couch, or there may have been some other problem, but when I hurriedly picked it up to move it, the case flopped open and papers spilled out. Fortunately, her drug samples were in secure sections in her case and didn't spill out since I wouldn't have known where to replace them. The papers were all loose, so I didn't think that putting them back in some order would be critical. As I collected the papers strewn about the floor mixed with her brochures and order forms were 4 cards. 1 was a sappy birthday card from me, 2 were homemade cards from the kids, and the 4th was a card that on the front said, "Happy birthday to a fine pizza," with a color drawing of a slice of pepperoni pizza, and on the inside it said, "And Playmate," with the words, "Most Fun," handwritten between and Playmate, and a shadow female form bending over. The inside was signed, "With enjoyment, Rob." I was stunned. While I didn't actually know who Rob was, I suspected. Over the last 2 months or so, Marie was training a new sales rep named Rob to take over part of her territory while she assumed most of the territory of a sales rep who had gotten pregnant and left. I took photos of the exterior and interior of Rob's card. Then I put all of the papers back in Marie's case with the cards underneath the rest of the documents, latched the case tightly, and put it back on the living room couch rather than bringing it into Marie's office. It took only 5 minutes on Marie's company's local website to get his name and photo. Robert Driscoll. He looked to be no more than 25 years old. He was good-looking, maybe even a little better looking than normal for such a rep. In fact, he looked very much like the guy that Marie had been dating when I swept her off her feet, according to her. By then, Julie was anxious to get to her game, so we got in my car and sped off. I engaged her in conversation the entire way, to keep my mind off what I had just found out and had shaken me to the core. I somehow was able to make it through Julie's game without throwing up, embarrassing myself or acting like the Sphinx, although I did defer more to Aaron than I normally do for substitutions and strategy. All the girls were happy when we won 4-3. Afterward, Aaron and his daughter Julie and I, Julie's best friend on our team, and a girl on the other team who was a good friend of Aaron's daughter, went for milkshakes. While everyone was having a good time at the table and yucking it up while sipping their milkshakes, I excused myself and called Grant's cell phone. Grant answered on the first ring. "You better not be wimping out of our doubles match tomorrow, Boris," he answered without even a hi. He calls me Boris, referencing Boris Becker, a former German pro who is considered the 11th best male tennis player of all time. I hope that he calls me that because he thinks that I look just like Becker, 6'3" tall, blonde hair, blue eyes, very good looking, or because of my tennis ability, and not because Boris was convicted of tax evasion after he retired. "No, I'm not, bozo. How do I retain you to just ask some questions so that we have an attorney-client relationship and you can't divulge even the questions to others?" I asked. "This isn't a joke?" he replied after a pause of a few seconds. "No," I responded a little more forcefully than I intended. "Okay, we reach an oral agreement to that effect now. Tomorrow you give me $1 after our doubles match, and I will email you a contract to sign Monday, okay?" "Agreed," I quickly retorted. "Okay, what questions?" "Just one for now. Who would you recommend as the best private investigator?" After a pregnant pause, he inquired, "Why do you want to know?" "You don't get to ask me questions at this time, only answer them." "Okay," he droned. "Wesley Associates. I'll give you one of their cards tomorrow." "Thanks," I said. "I'll be ready for tennis at 8 a.m. Bring your A game." Then I terminated the call. That night, Marie acted entirely normal for a Saturday with both the kids and me, including letting it be known after the kids went to bed that she wanted to simulate a couple of bonobos. I can't really say what was going through my mind when I was eating and then being intimate with her that night. While I almost sleepwalked through the first set in doubles tennis the next morning, I snapped out of it during the second set and actually played my most aggressive tennis in years, and Grant and I won against a good team, 2-6, 6-3, 6-1. Gant did give me the card for Wesley Associates, and I gave him $1. Grant didn't ask any questions, but as we left the court area, he sincerely said, "If you need to talk, whether as your attorney or your friend, let me know." I thanked him and drove home. That night, Marie and I had a virtual repeat of the bonobo simulation of the night. Wesley and Associates, in the form of operatives Annabelle Watson and William Bennett, justified Grant's recommendation of them. With the information that I gave them within 2 weeks, they gave me a complete report. Unfortunately, I can't say that the report was what I wanted, but it was almost what I expected. 10 days after I put the private investigator on the case, after Marie and Rob exited a sales call at a doctor's office in a suburb about 15 miles from our house, they decided to take lunch at a Motel 6 rather than at an Olive Garden. They were in room 117 for 1 hour, 3 minutes. Wesley has high-tech equipment, and Annabelle and William are smart and sneaky, so I got some photos taken through a window where the curtains were not completely closed, and a lot of audio. After I surreptitiously reviewed the evidence and paid my $4,215 bill, I came to the conclusion that the intimacy between them was recreational. I don't want to explain why in detail, but a couple of reasons were because they almost never kissed. as best as could be determined from the audio and certainly not at any time when visually observed by Annabelle or William. And because Marie said nothing about me that was in the least bit negative, and Rob never criticized his girlfriend. To confirm my conclusion, I called Annabelle and William after my review, told them what my conclusion was, and asked if, in their experience, they agreed. "That's certainly what it seemed like to me in the 2 weeks that I observed them, not just in Motel 6, Annabelle stated. "I have to agree with her," William chimed in. To double-check, I made an appointment with a female marriage counselor who was a friend of Jill's who I had met several times and gave her the information I had without expressing my conclusion. While stating a number of caveats to cover her back, she agreed with my assessment. This was especially so since, to be truthful, I had to report that there was absolutely no difference in the way that Marie treated me, the kids, or any of our mutual friends. Now that I had the information I needed, the question was, what to do? I decided to take a gray approach, which all of my 4 closest non-family friends recommended long before my problem arose. This included considering how much my optimum life had been degraded, what was best for me, what was best for my kids, what was best for my parents and friends, and even what was best for Marie. The conclusions I reached were: 1. I could not let Marie's affair with Rob continue. 2. If I directly confronted Marie, it would definitely harm our future relationship. We would never be 99% whole again. If we worked on it, we might make it back to 80%, maybe if we were lucky, 85%, but never to 99%. 3. The kids could never know. While they were now too young to appreciate it, there obviously would come a day when they would. I didn't want that day to ever come. 4. I didn't want to harm Marie physically, emotionally, or mentally, except that I wanted her to think that I might have found out even if I never confronted her, so that she would have angst for a long time. 5. I wanted Rob to pay. I had a caveman visceral type reaction to him. What I really wanted to do was to beat the ever-loving shit out of him. I wanted to crush his with a couple of swift kicks with steel-toed boots, like in some fantasies online. But I knew that it had to be more refined, but long-lasting. It could not entail telling his girlfriend, because then Marie would eventually find out. 6. If I could get revenge on Rob, if I could plant a seed with Marie that I knew but never confronted or accused her, and she never knew for sure, then I could see my life eventually getting back to 90% or more of optimal and 100% for the kids. 7. I wanted to act fast. I didn't want there to be even one more liaison between Marie and Rob. Now that I had all of the parameters set, the question was, what specifically to do? Since I work for a medical company and supervise a lab, I know lots about medications, viruses, bacteria, and other materials that end up in bloodstreams, and what effect they have on a human body. After reviewing all of the information that I had, my first inclination turned out to be the best one. I would infect Rob with both herpes simplex virus 1, HSV1, and herpes simplex virus 2, HSV2. Both can show symptoms within 2 to 12 days. If a particularly virulent strain of HSV1 is used, it can almost be certain that it will outwardly manifest itself within 2 to 4 days. I needed to find a way to infect Rob so that he would show obvious symptoms within 2 to 4 days while being sure that Marie wasn't infected. I rehired Annabelle and William to do a deep dive on Rob and tried to figure out a way to be sure that Marie never had a chance to be infected by him until he had obvious symptoms. Marie knows enough about medicine to easily recognize HSV1 and would avoid him like the plague, and would be nervous too. As it turns out, things worked out almost perfectly. The only part that didn't work out perfectly was that I was not able to prevent Marie and Rob from having another recreational escapade. They had one 13 days after the first one that Annabelle and William witnessed. This time it was after their last call of the day on a Tuesday at another suburban doctor's office at a Holiday Inn Express, room 142. This time they were in the room 57 minutes, and there was good audio but only 2 grainy photos. The audio was essentially no different than the first time and did not contradict my conclusion about recreational intimacy. The Thursday after the Tuesday encounter, Rob was in the locker room of a facility where he played squash. The out-of-town operative that I arranged for and paid over the internet and never had to personally meet with stumbled into Rob in the locker room and injected him with a high concentration of HSV-1 and HSV-2. I manufactured a problem at my office and with one of the kids to get Marie to stay home that Friday. She had only 2 appointments and was almost done with her training of Rob so he could handle them himself. I also lied that I had won a contest for a trip to Las Vegas, which I surprised Marie with. The surprise vacation for Marie and I was for that Saturday through Wednesday of the next week. To make the surprise contest win possible, I had already arranged with Marie's secretary to get the Monday to Wednesday appointments she had rescheduled, and for her parents and mine to take turns watching the kids, getting them to their weekend events, and off to and back from school on the weekdays. The quick trip to Vegas had the added benefit of enhancing Marie's and my sexual compatibility, which wasn't lacking to begin with, even though I was still having problems purging my mind of her relationship with Rob. Even though I didn't need them for normal escapades with Marie, I wanted to give her the sexual experience of her life, so I scored some little blue pills and a thin vibrator. Marie and I were intimate more times in the 4 nights and 5 days that we were in Vegas than in any 1-week period before in our lives. Marie left for work Thursday morning after our trip to Vegas as happy as I had ever seen her. She returned Thursday night nervous and almost morose. Of course I knew why. She saw the herpes break out on Rob's face, which Annabelle got a good couple of photos of without me disclosing anything about my out-of-town operative to her. Over the next week, Marie was like a long-tailed cat in a rocking chair factory. It was clear that she had gotten a blood test. Obviously not at my lab, although that was where Rob got his blood test, and was waiting for the results. Through subtle inquiries, I determined that she had no further relationship with Rob, and in fact, Rob had been terminated. I guess a pharmaceutical company doesn't like to have its sales reps making calls with herpes sores on their faces. Apparently, Rob recognized the symptoms as soon as he got his first breakout and immediately got treatment, so maybe it won't ruin his life forever. I could care less, one way or the other. I could tell the day that Marie got her negative blood tests back. It was the Wednesday a week after our trip to Vegas. She looked like the most relieved person in the world. She attacked me that night, having begged off intimacy since we got back from Vegas first, complaining of sexual fatigue from our capties there, and then an illness that she didn't want me to catch, causing her to even sleep in the guest room. I subtly tormented her for the next 2 weeks by letting her overhear conversations about someone getting fired from her office for having herpes. She didn't question how I found out, even though she didn't tell me, because the medical community is small and, as earlier indicated, my lab ran Rob's blood tests. For several weeks, she occasionally looked at me funny, wondering what I knew, but it never affected her actions. In fact, she seemed to make an effort to be even more affectionate and sexually available than normal. You may wonder how I spent all of the money that I had to spend without Marie finding out. The answer is fairly simple, despite the fact that considering the private investigators, the out-of-town operative, the trip to Vegas that supposedly I had won, and many other incidentals, it cost me more than $25,000. I borrowed the money from Amber, interest-free, with the agreement to pay it back gradually over 30 months. I could easily hide it over 30 months, but couldn't hide it over a period of 6 weeks. There was one caveat before Amber would loan me the money, however. She wanted to know why and promised never to disclose it to anyone. I trusted her. Especially, she still had that Pollyanna idea that I had saved her life, so I told her. I tried to tell her only the basics, but she eventually weaseled the entire story out of me over 2 days when Marie and the kids were on a short trip with her parents. I also told her that I may jettison Marie once the kids are off to college, if I can't completely forgive her. When she held $25,000 in cash in front of me, she said, "Here's the deal. You pay it back gradually over 30 months, but that's not the end of it. By the time that Julie's in college, I'll have given up my part-time job several years before that. If you jettison Marie, you and I become an item to see if we would be compatible over the long haul. Agreed?" I couldn't believe what she had just said. What it meant is that she had a subtle thing for me. And while she would never try to break up my marriage, if I did it myself, she wanted to try me out. "But you're younger than I am and may get married before that," I stammered. "Younger means nothing. The chances of me marrying someone besides you are small, but if it happens, we reassess at that time. Now, is it a deal, or do I put this money back under my mattress?" After a pause, I said, "Deal." Then, for the first time ever, Amber kissed me on the lips. It was no peck. It was a set-off-the-smoke-alarms kiss. My knees felt weak after she broke it off. "No more of that until Julie goes to college," she grinned, then shoved some of the cash down my pants, being sure to stroke my rock-hard Johnson in the process, dumped the rest on a table, and sauntered out. It's now 8 years after Rob got herpes and Marie got religion, so to speak. I do now consider myself to have a 90% optimum life, and I'm very glad, especially in view of how well my kids are doing, that I took a gray approach rather than a black or white one. I sometimes almost feel bad that I gave Rob herpes and got him fired. The reason that I ultimately have no guilt is because unless I did something about Marie's recreational intimacy with him because of my personality, I never would have been able to take the gray approach. Will I jettison Marie once Julie goes to college? At this point in time, I can't say. I do know that Amber remains in the background. Of course, I paid her loan back in less than 30 months, and I gave her a diamond tennis bracelet with the last payment. I haven't ever seen her since without the bracelet on. Just 2 days ago, when we were on a hike with a bunch of other people, including Marie, when we trailed behind the others at one point, Amber told me, "In case you're interested, I gave up my part-time job." I smiled at her. She smiled back. "Just 3 more years before Julie goes to college." She chuckled. Then I got the second plasma hot kiss of my life from her, and we quickly caught up with the rest of the hikers. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.